Hello and welcome back again to the Cheltenham Exchange and day 2 of our Punters preview, where we've got a fantastic lineup of very special guests who've agreed to come on and analyse a race each for us on day 2 of the festival. So thank you ever so much to the following people who are going to bring a race each to you today. So we've got the fantastic Barry Doyle from Champ.ie, who's going to look at the Ballymore Novice Hurdle. We've got a fountain of knowledge in Paul from the Fat Jockey Forum, who's going to look at the Brown Advisory Novice Chase. We've got the Queen of Wales, KatieMidwinter, from theconditional.com, a blog well worth reading, who's looking at the race of the day, the Champion Chase. We've got a shooting star from the racing journalism world, Ash Symonds from Only Fools Love Horses, who's going to look at the Glenfarclas Cross Country Chase. And to finish off the day, our very own evergreen Johnny Boy Evans, the legend of rail, the man who got 5 winners at Ascot this year, in case I hadn't mentioned, who's going to summarise the champion bumper for us to finish off day 2. So enjoy the show, folks.
Hello to all the Jumps fanatics out there. Barry from the Champ.ie podcast. A big thank you to Ian and all the lads from the Cheltenham Exchange for having me on, building up to the Cheltenham Festival. Ian, you stuck to your word. You're a man of your word. You didn't give me the Hunter's Chase. It's the Ballymore Novices Hurdle. So a good race allocation for me. Day 2 of the Cheltenham Festival, a race that's been absolutely farmed by Irish trainers of the last decade. 8 of the last 10 winners trained in Ireland. I'd expect this year to be absolutely no different. Hermes Allen, he heads the betting for at the top of the market at 11-4 for the Brits. He's 3 from 3 over hurdles. Of course, Paul Nicholls would love to have a say in this Ballymore, yet to win the Ballymore. This horse is, well, he's done it very easily at Newbury. He won on soft ground. He's won on good ground. Looks a very straightforward horse, and he really only knows one way of racing. Going forward, he's made all on his first 2 starts. Was headed briefly by Vicky Vale at Newbury. She's fallen in a hole, but there's yet to be really a horse that's really taken this horse on up at the top, at the head of affairs, really got up beside him, raced on his girt. Vicky Vale, she's about 10 wide at the time when she took him on. He's not going to have his own way at Cheltenham like he has on each of his 3 starts so far. Champ Kiley's in there, likes to make a Grade 1 winner from the Lawlers and Ace. Obviously, Gaelic Warrior coming back to the festival, likes to be up there on the pace. There's plenty of pace in here, and I just wonder would it turn into a bit of a burn-up. The Springer, obviously the dark one in here, well, not dark now, but probably the horse with the most potential is Ante-Post in the contest. We really do not know how good this horse is. He's won 2 from 2 since joining Willie Mullins. He's proven himself over 2 Mile 3 at Naas, which that was a big ask on debut. He's been impressive. And my worry with him is just experience. He's only a 5-year-old. He was a June foal. Would he be more a next year's horse? And I'd love to see him over a fence next season, jump beautifully in the Moscow Flyer. I'm not sure how deep that particular contest was, the Moscow Flyer at Punchestown on its most recent start. So just maybe a slight worry. He's plenty short in the market as well. 3 or 4 to 1. I think you can get about Ante-Post. Ante-Post, as Jerry Hannum would say. Goodland is the one for me. I could see the Irish really rolling in behind this horse, Barry Connell's horse, on the day. I think he's a bit of a Rolls Royce, actually. Goodland, absolutely loved what he done at the DRF. I loved what he done at Christmas at Leopardstown. And he's proven himself on all types of ground as well. He won his bumper on heavy ground at Wexford. Non-complicated sort. I just loved the way he goes through his races. At the DRF last time, he was very relaxed in the contest. He was able to take a lead off We've All Been Caught. Barry Connell obviously said his mentality is bomb-proof. I think it will stand him in good stead being to a festival, big crowds. He was like a lamb in the parade ring. Goodland. He obviously is a 7-year-old. He's probably further on in terms of his development than some of his nearest market rivals. Travels, relaxes in his races, jumps like an absolute buck, and has proven his stamina as well over further. So I think stepping back in trip, he's not a slow horse. I think in actual fact, going back in trip is really going to suit him. Barry Connell said, we're scratching the surface with him. I think there's going to be more to come from him. I think the race with the pace angle in here, it's likely to play to his strengths. He'll be able to take a lead, sit in behind horses, pick it up to it. I think he will stay. He's that turn of foot and he will stay, which is a big plus. So Yeah, good land for me. I can see the Irish really rolling in behind him on the day. One of the bigger price, a double figure price that, as the name would suggest, in the pocket, I think will be in the pocket and turning from home. I could see this horse, staying on well for a place. I think he's plenty of ability. Obviously stayed on well behind Ilete Tomp at Leopardstown at the Dublin Racing Festival, over 2 miles. Stepping up in trip is going to suit this horse. He's a point-to-point winner, plenty of ability. Henry de Bromhead trained. Rachel Blackmore probably will take the ride. And I would say that is capable of running a very big race. So good land for the victory. In the pocket for to pick up the pieces in second. And I think Impere Pa over a fence next season, I think it's going to be very exciting. Thanks, lads. Loving the content. Continue, and very best of luck for Cheltenham. Of course, just a month away.
Hi, everyone. It's Paul Beck, a.k.a. Spectre. The boys have very kindly asked me to preview the Brown Advisory Novice Chase. I think on the day this is going to be a race that has probably less than 8 runners, so it won't be an each-way play on the day, although Ante-Post, I think it might be quite nice to have something on board each way at a price. But it's a race that's typically won by a horse at the head of the market. I think we also have to consider there's a few horses that could go in different directions. Galliard de Maynee, I think, is probably most likely to go for the National Hunt Chase, and he's pretty prominent in the betting. I think Ramillies, in the same ownership, will also go the same way. He just looks as though he's absolutely made for a trip. So I think the 2 Donnelly horses will go and oppose each other in the National Hunt Chase. Sir Gerard could drop down to the Turners, I suppose, but Willie did name check this race after his seasonal debut, and given he's going to go there most likely with just only 1 chase under his belt, I think the longer trip will probably help him. Just going that half a yard slower. But having said that, there was nothing really too concerning about that Novice Chase debut. I think he was a bit sticky over the first few when they were just going no pace at all. But once they got to racing pace, I thought he jumped really well. So you would certainly hope that he can repeat that. He's also from a point-to-point background, so he's had previous chasing experience. So that wouldn't concern me at all. And I do think, as I say, he'll come to this race. Jerry Colomb is the current favourite, and he's the one with the eye-catching string of ones to his name, which people very much get attracted to. I'd be concerned that he's not really faced anything yet. It's hard to really pin down the level of form, and of course that doesn't mean he couldn't be a top horse, but you'd like to see him go in there with some kind of form in his background that suggests he's a grade 1 horse, and we haven't actually seen that yet. At any point in his career, but he does promise to be. So it's hard to fundamentally hold that against him. But I'm going to combine that with the fact that all along until recently they've said he wants soft ground. The softer the ground, the better for him. And it's only very recently that Gordon Elliott sort of changed his tune and said, I think he'll be fine with the extra trip. Well, he either does or he doesn't want soft ground. That didn't change with the trip. It will help, certainly. But, it just raises sufficient doubt for me to say he doesn't look particularly good value at around the 2-1 mark. The real whacker, certainly deserves consideration. He's been around Cheltenham twice this season, jumped very well, and looked very good. Again, not really met anything that you would say is grade 1 calibre, but he can't do any more than he's done and has to come into consideration. But I see him placing rather than winning. The base form for him doesn't really stack up. I would have wanted to see him as a better hurdler than he actually was. I think you want a hurdler really to have been hitting the mid to high 140s to consider they could be, a 160 chaser generally. He was mid 130s, so kind of puts me off slightly. Time Hill, that second season over hurdles, puts me off. There's a whole number of things that put me off him. I don't doubt he's a very good horse, and he was much better last time than he had been previously. He jumped well. But he's a 9-year-old now. He's not going to be getting any better. and I just feel as though they just hung around over hurdles for a season too long. Again, I suspect he'll run a good race, assuming his jumping stands up like it did last time, but I just don't see him winning. Again, I think place prospects at best. The other horse that I'm going to mention and put into the picture is the Devil's Coachman. Now, he is very ground dependent, much like it had been suggested Jerry Colomb was. So if it came up as a soft ground festival, I'd be more interested in him than Jerry Colomb, I think, at the price. He's available at 11 to 1, no runner, no bet. And he's one of those bets to nothing, really, because if it's good to soft ground, he's not going to run. So you're going to get your money back. But he just strikes me as outstanding each way value, really, in the context of the race. So I think he's an each way play. But my selection in the race is Sir Gerard. Also playing him no runner, no bet for obvious reasons, because we've got a bit of Willie Mullins bingo to play before we get to the second day. But he would be my selection. He has the class. He's the class act, and if he jumps, he wins. Cheers, boys. Hope you have a great festival, and hopefully I'll see a few of you there.
Hi, it's Katie here from theconditional.com and In the Saddle podcast, and this is my preview of the Champion Chase on the second day of this year's Cheltenham Festival. This is a race that I think is going to be quite tricky to predict. Now, the top three in the market, I think you can make a case for all of them, for Energumen, Edwardstone and Editor de Gite. The three of them met in the Clarence House, and a rematch will be very interesting. The horse that I think represents the most value is Editor de Gite here. I love the tenacity that he showed last time when winning his first Grade 1. He got into a battle with Edwardstone, but he showed great mental strength and a lot of heart and desire to get that win. And I think that could be the difference for him again in the Champion Chase. If he gets into a nice lead out in front, I think he'll be very difficult to peg back. And at around 5 to 1, I think he does represent the value in this field. Energumen's win last year, I don't think it amounts to too much. I don't think he beat a lot of horses that were in form. Shishkin, of course, was pulled up. Chacun pour soi failed to complete. The ground was incredibly testing. I think that all played into Energumen's hands. And it was an easy win in the end. But I think he's facing stiffer competition this time around, and his run last time out, it would fill me with a lot of doubt. So I think he's best watched for now. Edwardstone was fantastic in the Tingle Creek, but Editor de Gite got the better of him in a battle at Cheltenham last time, and so I would just side with Editor de Gite on that race. And so I think, it would be a fantastic win for Gary Moore, and for connections of the horse, it would be an absolute fairy tale. He's a horse that I've underestimated in the past. I thought maybe he wasn't up to scratch at Grade 1 level, but he's proved me wrong, and I think he's worth sticking with for now. So I'm going to go for Editor de Gite, around 5 to 1, represents the value for me in the Queen Mother Champion Chase.
Hello all, Ash from Only Fools Love Horses here. Thank you very much to the Cheltenham Exchange for having me on. First of all, I'm using my laptop camera. I'm away from home, and all I've got is my camera, my trusty microphone. So I've got to deal with the tools I've got, and I've been given the cross-country chase. Now, it caused a little bit of controversy this race. People saying if they like it or not. I like the race. I think it's a really interesting one, just one that sort of separates all the different races at the festival. And the one that's topping the market, and it seems like Twitter's horse, is Delta Work. 11 to 10 for Gordon Elliott to retain his title from last year. His claims are obvious. He won the race last year. He's run off pretty much top weight at Cheltenham the last day. It was top weight the last day, 2 starts ago, sorry. Rob James was claiming £7, so effectively running off 153. I suppose he beat Frankie de Burley by a few lengths that day when Delta Work was third. I think Frankie de Burley was back in roughly 5th or 6th, I want to say, beating a couple of lengths there. Frankie de Burley was in receipt of £12, so you can see the difference in weight and how they performed. His claims are obvious. I'd say he's a bit too short in my books. He's obviously got that experience there, but 11 to 10 from an Ante-Post perspective, a lot of people thinking this horse that can't be beaten, and it probably I wouldn't say can't be beaten. I say there's definitely routes to take him on, but he's definitely got very strong claims, but I won't be rowing into him. I think Galvin's really interesting. I think he's really, really interesting for the same stable as Delta work. Gordon Elliott's come out and said that he's training for the race, see how he deals with the fences. I think this could suit him really, really well if he deals with the fences. I've always thought this horse wants a real trip. Like, I really fancied him for the Gold Cup that Applutard won, and I just thought he was staying on. I really thought he was staying on down the outside, but just didn't have that turn of foot, which sometimes a Gold Cup can turn into in the latter stages. And unfortunately, because he's such a high rating, they can never really go to the National with him, because he's off a mark of, I think, 166. That's the last time he ran, was what he's officially rated. I think going to 3 mile 6 here at Cheltenham, if they go for the race, obviously level weights, I think he's really interesting at 5-1. I'd be seriously interested by him if we get a few more confirmations from the Elliott yard. A few more in here that could go, could not go. But the one I'd like to highlight, a massive price, going all the way down for Patrick Griffin, is Roy Marge. Now, I mentioned this on our Ante-Post video on the Only Fools Love Horses channel, so do make sure to check it out. But he also ran in the race on trials day. The race won by Back on the Lash. Delta Work was in third, and he was going really well. It was his first time over in the UK jumping these types of fences, and I thought he dealt with them really, really well. I thought he jumped brilliantly. He was held up towards the rear, jumping them well, but then just fell at the 20th, unshipped Patrick Mullins, who came over. I think for only that was his only ride, was Patrick Mullins that day. He's before that finished third in the race won by Manella Indo. Statler was in second. That was at Tremor. Massive odds 50-1 there. But before that, and it's really interesting now, he went over in November. He went over for the Grand Steeplechase Cross Country de Compagnie, and he's ran a great race there. He's been giving the second and the first plenty of weight. I think he's giving the second nearly a stone and the first roughly around £7. And he's run a great race to finish 2 lengths down in third place. He seems like one of these specialists who just likes these types of fences. I thought he dealt with the fences really well at Cheltenham. And at 33-1, Roy Marge, I see no reason why Connections wouldn't go here. Officially, he's rated 149, so he's probably the closest rating to Delta Work for the race, because all of these are rated sort of like 130, 135, so on official ratings, they can't really get near. But Roy Marge is rating 149 officially, so he is rated officially to be able to get there. And I think Roy Marge is very interesting at 33-1. I wouldn't discount Prengard. Edna Bolger obviously has a specialist training facility for these Banks races. There's a brilliant video on the Jockey Club of this aerial shot of his horses training over the fences. If you haven't already seen that, do check that out. And he was fancied for last year. He came over for the race last year, pulled up, went 9-2. Mark Walsh said that he made a mistake at the 21st, and that was game, set, match for him. If he comes back to what he was shown beforehand, won the 2021 Grand Steeplechase Cross Country de Compagnie, which I've mentioned there for Roy Marge, won that race in 2021. Before that, won another race as well at the same course. So if he comes back to anything like that form, I think he has to be really interesting. Edna Bolger is a canny trainer for these races. He's still a 7-year-old. He still can have improvement about him. I think he might be a little bit underestimated at 14-1. But that's the cross country. Delta Works, strong chances, obviously. I think Roy Marge might be an interesting one at 33-1, and it'd be great to see Galvin go to the race. Thank you very much for having me on. If you don't already, please do follow all 3 of us at Only Fools Love Horses and the Twitter account. Make sure to drop the YouTube channel and subscribe. I got all my plugs out of the way. Thank you very much, Cheltenham Exchange people, for having us on, and enjoy the rest of the video.
Hello, John here, and I have been given the champion bumper to wrap up day 2. In previous years, the bumper has proved a lot easier to solve, but this year it's thrown up rather a large puzzle. We have had a few favourites throughout the season, and at present that honour is with the Mullins trained 4-year-old It's For Me, who won impressively at Navan back in January. However, I feel he is a little bit short based on that one run, despite how good it looked at the time. Other highly thought of horses, such as Queen's Gamble and King of Kingsfield, have blotted their copybooks on their most recent start. Both Encanto Bruno and Better Days Ahead have chances based on what they've done so far, but it'll come as no surprise that my selection is the Mullins and Ricci combo of Chapeau du Soleil. He was in my 5 to follow at the start of the season, and I also put him up in one of our Ante-Post videos. Obviously, it is a bit of a risk with with his one run this season, but I think there is a lot more to come from this horse despite his obvious greenness on that day. He is currently around 7-1. I expect a lot better should he show up next month. Finally, before I go, I'd just like to thank our fabulous guests Barry, Paul, Katie and Ash for their contributions, and good luck for day 2 of the festival.